In Mexico, a 6-year-old boy falls 40 feet after his harness breaks.
Authorities say the child was rushed to the hospital after sustaining minor injuries. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. Philippines and India to engage first round of preferential trade agreement. United States urges its arms manufacturer to team up with Filipino companies. Taiwan to buy U.S. arms for regional stability. Bolivia inks a major lithium trade deal with Russia and China. And Ethiopia requests to join BRICS alliance.
Well, allow me to...
The National Water Resources Board, or NWRB, has approved a lower allocation in Metro Manila this July. NWRB reduces the water allocations to 50 cubic meters per second from 52 cubic meters per second. The measure is part of the government's efforts to conserve water ahead of a long period of El Nino. NWRB will also lower the allocation for irrigation from 30 cubic meters per second to 28.5 cubic meters per second. According to the NWRB, Angat Dam's water levels declined to 183.25 meters as of June 28, 2023. A slight decrease in water level will get the dam to a critical level of 180 meters due to the impending effects of the dry spell. Meanwhile, Pag-asa warns within 2 weeks the dam will reach the said critical level. The Weather State Bureau also notes that El Nino could hit between June and July and may persist until the first quarter of 2024.
Meralco reports a decline in electricity rates in July. They say this is due to the end of the summer season when electricity consumption also dips. Meralco's Regulatory Affairs head Ronald Valles says electricity prices have already decreased in the spot market. He adds that the price of coal in the market has also decreased. World market prices of gasoline have fallen by more than 1 peso and diesel prices decreased by nearly 1 peso.
Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or BSP, estimates that inflation will continue to slow down coming into the month of June. The inflation rate dropped to 6.1% in May. BSP forecasts a range of 5.3 to 6.1% in June. They also estimate a decrease in prices for meat and fruit. The BSP aims to achieve a range within 2 to 4% inflation rate. Official data from the Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA, will be announced on the 7th of July.
NCR Regional Wage Board approves a 40 peso increase to the daily minimum wage for workers in the private sector. A small win compared to the 150 peso increase proposed in the Senate. Mark Tapa with the details.
Wage Order Number NCR 24 will take effect on the 16th of July. This rises the daily pay from 570 to 610 pesos for the non-agricultural sector and 533 to 573 pesos in agriculture and service establishments with less than 15 employees. The Department of Labor and Employment says this will benefit about 1.1 million workers in Metro Manila. However, labor groups are not happy with the wage hike, declaring it is insufficient to combat the rising inflation. Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri says the amount is meager compared to the family expenses. Senator Grace Poe believes the 40 pesos wage hike also falls short of the rise in prices of basic commodities. Mark Tapel, reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Octa Research Fellow Dr. Guido David says that the situation in the country is now stable. In an interview with Radio Agila, he mentions occasional waves of infections, but they will not be as severe compared to when we had no vaccines. He emphasizes that Filipinos have learned to adapt to the virus, making it milder for the majority. David still advised the public, especially those with comorbidities and senior citizens, to remain cautious. He states that COVID-19 positivity rates have gone down to 7.6%. In Metro Manila, it's recorded at 5.6%, meeting the World Health Organization standard of 5%.
The Department of Foreign Affairs says that the Philippines and India are organizing a preferential trade agreement of PTA. Vin Pascua tells us more.
During the 5th India-Philippines Joint Commission on Bilateral Cooperation or JCBC, Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo and his counterpart Indian Minister of External Affairs Jai Shankar reaffirmed the two nations' economic ties. Manalo and Jai Shankar encouraged Filipino and Indian companies to continue their engagement in exploring new investment opportunities. The two top diplomats also acknowledged the growing engagement between businesses in both countries. The Indian minister welcomes the Philippines' measure to introduce e-visas for Indian nationals. He notes that he already extended the e-visa facility to the country. However, the Department of Foreign Affairs has yet to disclose the details on the first round of the negotiations. Meanwhile, the two officials also discussed India's commitment to sharing digital innovations in various areas. Vin Pascua, reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The United States wants the Philippines to be strong in terms of defense manufacturing. JD Mahinay has the report.
Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri says the United States wants to move their arms manufacturing production into the country. This is after a meeting with several American officials to discuss Philippine-U.S. relations during the Senate President's working visit to Washington. According to Senator Zubiri, U.S. is willing to convince their arms manufacturers to move shops into the country to partner with Filipino companies. He adds there is a need to amend the modernization of the armed forces of the Philippines. He notes the country's military forces needs to acquire new modern equipment following the amendment of the procurement law. The Senate President previously filed a bill on the Philippine Defense Industry Act of 2022 last year. Under the proposed law, the local defense industry will limit dependence on its allies when it comes to acquisition of defense requirements. JD Mahinay reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
France sends an invitation to the armed forces of the Philippines to join next year's Pacific War Games. France invited the country's military forces to the 2024 Marara exercise in French Polynesia. The said exercise aims to address disaster response and other contingencies. Last May, Philippines sent observers to the 12-day Quad Sud multinational exercise that is also aligned with disaster crisis management in New Caledonia in the South Pacific. France also hopes to cooperate with the country on maritime security.
Las Islas Filipinas Education Services conducts its first ever Australian Education Expo in the country. Elijah Villanueva has the details.
Las Islas Filipinas Education Services travels to Dugucanan Capital Gymnasium and meet hundreds of students from various high schools in Siquijor Province.
Welcome to the province of Siquijor!
Under the leadership of its Chief Executive Officer and founder, Ryan Santamaria Everist, the agency will provide prompt and professional visa services for students aspiring to study in Australia.
Studying in Australia offers experience of gaining global perspective, which develops cross-cultural skills, improves communication skills, builds network, and incredible standard of living. It also helps students to get their dream job in a multinational corporation, which otherwise would not be
Various colleges and schools from Australia were involved in the first Australian Education Expo. This includes Spencer College, Melbourne City Institute of Education, Stanley College, and Skills Australia Institute. Also, Tass College, Riverdale Institute, Laurus Education, and Newton College. Filipino students are currently increasing in numbers and leading the way in studying in Australia.
I recommend Las Islas Filipinas because they really take care of you from step by step from the beginning to the end. Even when you arrive there, they really look after you, and they really offer you the best schools that would really get you to where you want to be. And MCI is one of the best schools, and me, I am now a trainer and assessor, which is teaching commercial cookery Cert 3. I was their student 5 years ago, and I'm very, very grateful that I stayed.
Based on research conducted by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies in 2019, 1 out of every 5 young people aged 15 to 24 is unemployed, not receiving education or training. According to Dr. Marina Salamanca from the Office of the Schools Division Superintendent of the Department of Education, this is one of the goals of the province, which is why they are collaborating on such opportunities.
We're able to give us the opportunity of how really our senior high school is faring here, the division of Siquijor. So this is indeed once in a lifetime. Though we are still hoping for the next series of partnerships with Australia through Las Islas Filipinas, because our students are really exposed to the different opportunities of working there, studying there, and for any venture that would make their life better.
Elijah Villanueva for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, Russia asks global South states to boycott Zelensky's peace forum. Argentina to use Chinese yuan to settle IMF payment. And UK government to appeal Rwanda's asylum policy. Stay tuned, Mata ng Agila International will return for more global news.
This portion is brought to you by 318 Automart.
In the fast-changing landscape of business, there are individuals who defy conventional paths to build diversified portfolios. They refuse to be confined in a box, instead embracing the pursuit of opportunities. And one such individual is with us in this episode, an entrepreneur with numerous business interests, a content creator, a talent manager. One can say he's quite indefatigable. Wilbert Ting Tolentino of Wheel of Life Group of Companies tells us his journey in business diversification and possibly inspiring others only here in Open for Business.
Kapag nag-work tayo, hindi laging 75 na ang grades natin. Bigay natin yung pinakamataas. Gawin natin 100 kung kaya.
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos. Sunday, 9 p.m.
We now welcome you back to Mata ng Agila International. Taiwan's Defense Ministry says 11 Chinese aircraft crossed the Taiwan Strait median line. The ministry adds that a total of 24 Chinese warplanes, including fighter jets, were spotted near Taiwan Friday. There were also 5 Chinese battleships seen in a joint war readiness. According to Taiwan, the movement was likely a response to the visit to Taipei by a United States congressional delegation.
Washington approves the sale of $440 million worth of ammunition and parts to Taiwan. According to the State Department, it would sell $332.2 million worth of .30 caliber ammunition and related equipment, as well as $108 million in spare and repair parts for vehicles and weapons. The sale aims to support Taiwan to maintain a strong defensive capability, security, and economic progress in its region. Taiwan's defense ministry welcomes the proposed trade, reaffirming that it promotes regional stability.
Sri Lanka's central bank presents a debt restructuring plan to restore economic stability in the country. This is after a devastating economic crisis in 2022, defaulting on its foreign debt for the first time. The plan is an effort to meet the conditions of a $2.9 billion IMF bailout. It includes making a deal with holders of locally issued dollar-denominated bonds and longer currency and treasury bonds. Last year, the government experienced a foreign exchange crisis, leaving them unable to pay for imports of fuel, food, and other essentials. This also led to the removal of former Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
European Union or EU leaders said that they would make long-term commitments to bolster Ukraine's security. This after the leaders met at a summit in Brussels where the EU and its member countries stand ready to contribute to commitments that would help Ukraine defend itself in the long term. The bloc's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, suggested they could build on existing EU support, such as the European Peace Facility Fund that has financed billions of euros in arms for Ukraine and a training mission for Ukrainian troops. EU would contribute together with partners and in full respect of the security and defense policy of certain member states. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron left early from the EU summit to return to France, where 3 nights of unrest over the police shooting of a teenager have taken place. Macron canceled a media conference scheduled for the second and last day of the summit to go back to Paris. He made no comment to reporters as he left.
The EU's top diplomat Josep Borrell says that Vladimir Putin would pose a greater danger now after Wagner's attempted mutiny, which has sparked Russia's largest political crisis in years. Putin confronted the biggest challenge since he came to power in 1999 after Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin spearheaded a mutiny at the weekend. EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen said that the rebellion would resonate with different like-minded organizations, further stressing that it would be more important now to double down on support for Ukraine, be it in military capability or financial support. Borrell also said Europe needed to support Ukraine for the long haul, supporting the country during the war and after, and recommended a Ukrainian defense fund.
It's clear that Putin goes out of this crisis weakened, but a weaker Putin is a greater danger. So we have to be very much aware of the consequences.
The fund, he said, would support the modernization of the Ukrainian army with a commitment from the EU to ensure the war-torn country's security. Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda echoed Borrell's sentiments earlier as he called for decisive action to confront Russian advancements.
Belarus, and we are extremely concerned about the developments in Belarus. Prigozhin is already there. Probably I cannot say it by 100%, but this is very likely that he is already there. The fighter groups, or these serial killers, I call them like this, they could be and emerge in Belarus at any moment, and nobody knows when they could turn against us. And
Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova asked countries of the Global South to boycott Ukraine's peace forum. Zakharova asserts holding a peace summit without Russia is an attempt to discuss Western propaganda. She says the peace formula of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has nothing to do with ending the conflict, but a political scheme of demands based on pretense. The Russian diplomat also warns global South states not to believe Zelensky. She says Zelensky has a history of regenerating on its international obligations, particularly the Minsk agreements, which were endorsed by the UN Security Council.
Ethiopia has asked to join BRICS bloc of emerging markets. Being one of Africa's fastest growing economies, Ethiopia has continued to work with international institutions that can protect its interests. Ethiopia has the second largest population in Africa, but its economy ranks only 59th in the world, according to the International Monetary Fund. The term BRIC was coined by Goldman Sachs economist Jim O'Neill in 2001 to describe the rise of Brazil, Russia, India, and China. The BRIC powers had their first summit in Russia back in 2009, a year prior to South Africa joining. Argentina, the world's 23rd largest economy, has received China's endorsement into the trade bloc, with its addition marking it a formidable trade competitor for the West. South Africa is set to host the next summit amid speculations that Russia's President Vladimir Putin could be tried for multiple war crime allegations. BRICS countries account for more than 40% of the world's population and about 26% of the global economy.
Chile took temporary control over the leadership of Latin America's Pacific Alliance after a disagreement that saw Mexico refusing to hand over the rotating presidency of the trade bloc to Peru. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador labeled Peruvian President Dina Boluarte's administration as purely a facade after she took over from her predecessor, Pedro Castillo.
Mañana se ha producido el traspaso de la presidencia pro tempore de la Alianza del Pacífico desde México a nuestro país. Chile ha asumido este desafío con el espíritu de contribuir a la integración.
A meeting of the Pacific Alliance trade bloc composed of Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and Peru, set to be held in Lima in December, was postponed. Peru will assume the presidency on the 1st of August.
Vamos a ejercer la presidencia pro tempore durante un mes y luego vamos a traspasar la presidencia pro tempore al Perú. Nosotros siempre hemos reconocido el derecho que le corresponde al Perú para ejercer la presidencia pro tempore y en
Bolivia has signed lithium agreements with Russian state nuclear firm Rosatom and China's CITIC Guan Group. The South American country's government said that it looks to develop its untapped resource of the battery material. The deal is estimated to be worth about $1.4 billion, following a similar agreement with Chinese battery maker CATL. This signifies another win for Beijing in its efforts to lock in supply of the metal used in electric vehicles. Bolivia's iconic salt flats are home to the world's largest lithium resources at 21 million tons, but the country has long struggled to ramp up industrial production or develop commercially viable reserves. Governments, mining farms or mining firms, battery markets, and car makers worldwide, from Tesla to BMW, are scrambling to secure supply of the metal, which is needed for many of the batteries being used to power a major shift towards electric vehicles.
También entre las dos empresas tenemos un convenio con cada una de ellas para totalizar otros $1.400 millones aproximadamente.
Along with Bolivia, Chile and Argentina make up the so-called lithium triangle, home to the world's largest trove of the metal. Chile and Argentina are far more advanced in production, with their projects often taking years to reach fruition.
La velocidad con la que se está transformando la tecnología en el mundo demanda cada vez mayor litio y mayor industrialización de este recurso natural para satisfacer toda esa creciente demanda. Adicionalmente,
Former President Jair Bolsonaro nearly loses his political future as 3 of the required 4 court justices vote to convict him of his last year's corruption charges. Bolsonaro is also accused of creating a national demonstration to overturn the election results in 2022. He narrowly lost to his rival Ignacio Lula da Silva. The demonstration resulted in the invasion of government buildings by thousands of his supporters. He denies the charges. Bolsonaro could be barred from public office until 2030 if a majority of Brazilia's court judges rule him as guilty of power abuse and media exploitation. He does not risk jail in this case, but he also faces other criminal investigations that could put him behind bars.
Argentina will pay $2.7 billion to the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, in order to revamp their loan program. Part of the payment will be in Chinese yuan, as the country desperately holds onto their dollar reserves. Argentina is currently dealing with a weak currency and an annual inflation of over 100%. $1.6 billion will be paid for in special drawing rights, or SDRs, and IMF reserve asset. Presidential spokeswoman Gabriela Cerruti says this was in line with the IMF agreement.
On Thursday, Turkmenistan inaugurated Arkadag in honor of former leader Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, cementing one of the most extraordinary personality cults in the world. With songs and dances, drone shows, and fireworks, Turkmenistan inaugurates a $5 billion smart city. Serdar Berdimuhamedov, his son and current president, unveiled the city around 30 kilometers southwest of the capital, Ashgabat. The new city, built in the foothills of the Kopet Dag Mountains, is named after Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov. Observers say that the former president continues to be the invisible hand in the country. The ex-Soviet Central Asian nation is one of the most secretive countries in the world, and access to foreign media is extremely rare. Rights groups have accused Turkmenistan of channeling money from its gas profits on lavish projects, promoting Berdimuhamedov's personality cult with little benefit for the broader population. Officials have billed Arkadag as a city of the future, adding that green technologies were used in its construction.
In a split 2-1 ruling, 3 Court of Appeal judges said that Rwanda could not be considered a safe third country where migrants from any country could be sent. The British Appeals Court ruled that the UK government's plan to send asylum seekers on a one-way trip to Rwanda is unlawful. This marks a significant blow to the Conservative administration's pledge to stop migrants from making risky journeys across the English Channel. Refugee law expert David Cantor said the ruling would send a ripple effect more widely through this idea of sending asylum seekers to third countries.
Unanimously, the Court of Appeal confirmed that removing asylum seekers to a safe country is entirely consistent with the Refugee Convention, including Article 31. Indeed, the Court of Appeal found that it is lawful, in principle, for the government to relocate people who come to the UK illegally to a safe third country.
The UK has had many negotiations with many countries which have robust law structures and asylum procedures, and has found little success in adopting similar schemes. The judges said that a policy of deporting asylum seekers to another country deemed as safe was not in itself illegal, and the government said it would challenge the ruling at the UK Supreme Court.
This is a Court of Appeal judgment. We've made it clear that we're seeking permission to appeal it, and we will await the outcome of the next level in the process and the next decision from the courts. So it is premature, frankly, to assume that this is the end of the policy. We maintain a high level of confidence in the lawfulness of the policy. We are committed to delivering it, and we're committed to working in partnership with Rwanda.
Up next, France braces for third night of violent protests. A 6-year-old boy falls 40 feet after a harness breaks in Mexico. And Toronto elects Olivia Chow as first racialized mayor. Mata ng Agila International will be back after the short break. Don't go away.
report, pang-76 ang Pilipinas sa happiest countries out of 137 countries. Tatalakayin natin yan. Kasama ang dalawang mag-BFF at happy hosts ng Net25, sina Love Anyuber at Tony Pet Gaba.
Ang goal ay talagang, walang patid na genuine na pagbibigay ng saya sa tao.
Hindi ko akalain na yung pagiging natural ng pagpapatawa, madadala ko hanggang dito sa trabaho ko.
Happy ba kayo in terms of these factors?
Okay.
Social support, income, health. Happy once pa nga ba ang mga Pilipino? Mag-reality check tayo. Ayoko na mag-comedy. Pinagtatawanan lang ako eh.
A former school guard who hid while a killer went on a shooting rampage 5 years ago at a Florida high school has been found not guilty. 17 people and 14 students and 3 staff died in that tragedy. Arlene Ocampo has the details.
60-year-old Scott Peterson had been charged with multiple counts of child neglect and making a false statement claiming he did not hear the gunshots. He has been found not guilty.
Verdict, count 2. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is not guilty.
The 30-year veteran of the Broward Sheriff's Office had been the school's resource officer. He was fired after an investigation into the shooting. Peterson wept as the judge read the verdict Thursday. Outside of court, Peterson said, and these are his words, "The only person to blame was that monster." A former student at the school, Nicholas Cruz, is serving a life sentence after pleading guilty to 17 counts of first-degree murder.
As to the defendant in this case, the defendant is not guilty. So say we all this 29th day of June, 2023 at Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida.
Arlene Ocampo from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
At least 4 Mexican National Guard officers have been injured in a car bomb explosion in north-central Mexico. The blast happened late Wednesday in the city of Celaya in Guanajuato State. Jane Kathleen Gregorio has the report.
Mexican police blamed the violence on a turf war between the Jalisco and the Santa Rosa de Lima drug cartels. The officers had been responding to a report of a parked car with bodies inside of it. The vehicle exploded as they approached it, seriously injuring them. They are recovering in hospital. The explosion came as authorities continue a search for more than a dozen police employees kidnapped Tuesday in the southern state of Chiapas. The captors are demanding the resignation of several state police officials, saying they favor one cartel over another. Jane Kathleen Gregorio for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Spanish police have seized 6.5 tons of cocaine in a drug bust that saw 13 people arrested. Authorities say the drugs had come from Colombia. JC Yumal has the details.
Smugglers hid the contraband in containers of bananas. Once in Spain, it made its way to distributors in Andalusia. Police raided several homes and warehouses where they found the drugs. They also seized more than $1 million in cash, various vehicles, and high-end watches. Police believe the profits from drug dealing are being laundered through a business that buys and sells frozen fish. However, they say the big money is made importing large quantities of cocaine from South America through maritime shipping. The value of the latest seizure is estimated at $254 million or 14 trillion pesos. JC Yumul for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Hundreds of military police officers in Honduras raided 2 high-security prisons Thursday in a bid to regain control of the institutions from criminal gangs. The raids follow last week's riot at a women's prison, which left 46 inmates dead. Marjorie Quintos reports.
Dubbed Operation Faith and Hope, the police action targeted the cache of weapons smuggled into the prisons in Honduras. The two prisons have a capacity of 2,000 inmates each. They house the leaders of the Mara Salvatrucha and Barrio 18 gangs, the two most feared gangs in Central America. Honduran prisons have been a hotbed of violence as criminal gangs vie for control. In prison raids earlier this week, police seized weapons, ammunition, and marijuana plants. Honduran President Xiomara Castro turned control of the prisons over the military for a one-year period. During that time, it must recruit, train, and educate at least 2,000 new prison guards. Marjorie Quintas for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Farmers and police in the Netherlands clashed during a protest Thursday outside of The Hague. The producers are upset with the government's environmental plans, which they say could put them out of business. Carlo Valdez has the story.
Several hundred people turned out for the demonstration. Farmers in the Netherlands are upset with the proposal to limit the number of animals they can raise and possibly shut down some farms. The government says that it is necessary to cut emissions to comply with European Union standards. Talks between farm organizations and the government broke down last week. Officers with riot shields and batons prevented a group of farmers from entering the parliament building where the debate was underway. Police arrested 7 people in the scuffle. 2 officers suffered minor injuries. Carlo Valdez for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
France is bracing for more violent protests after a police officer fatally shot a teenager Tuesday during a traffic stop. Authorities deployed some 40,000 police to try to keep the peace Thursday, more than 4 times the number on Wednesday. Jay Suarez reports.
The anger has boiled over, and for 3 days now, this is what the streets of several major French cities have looked like. Protesters setting fires, vandalizing property, burning cars, and clashing with police. Authorities have arrested more than 150 people, and more are likely to be rounded up as the arrest continues. Nighttime curfews have been imposed in some areas. A 17-year-old victim has been identified as only as Nahel M. He died after being shot in the chest at point-blank range as he drove away from police who tried to stop him for a traffic violation. His death has reignited debate in France about how police treat ethnic minorities in low-income neighborhoods. The government is hoping to avoid a repeat of the riots in 2005 that followed the deaths of 2 boys of African descent in a police chase. In that unrest, police arrested more than 6,000 people. Jay Suarez for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The presses have stopped at one of the world's oldest newspapers. Wiener Zeitung has been printing the news in Austria for 320 years. Employees put out the last paper edition of the publication this week. Jessica Bautista has the details.
Founded in 1703, the former biweekly paper came under the ownership of the Austrian government in 1780 under the rule of Emperor Franz Joseph I. It became the country's official gazette. Its main source of revenue has been government notices and advertisements. The Austrian government has now decided it will no longer require it and other companies to take out ads in the paper. As well, the government will transition Wiener Zeitung from a daily newspaper to a training and further education medium. On July 1st, the paper will become an online publication. Staff and readers have not bought into the change. On Thursday, they staged several protests outside the Federal Assembly in Vienna. Jessica Bautista for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
A 14-year-old teen was killed after falling from NYC train in another subway surfing accident. The boy was killed after falling from a Queen 7 train. A report from law enforcement sources say that the teenager was riding on the top of the train and died from a traumatic head injury. The incident remains under investigation with no other injuries reported. According to MTA data, there are reports of 58 people from January that rode outside subway cars and 52 from February. New York City Mayor Eric Adams sees social media as the cause of the trend of doing dangerous stunts for TikTok clout, with the number of subway surfing incidents increasing by 366% from 2021 and 2022.
A 6-year-old boy plummeted nearly 40 feet after his zipline harness broke at a Mexican amusement park. The child is recovering after the terrifying fall at Parque Fundidora's Amazonian expedition in Nuevo Leon. Family members said that the boy's harness broke, causing him to plunge into an artificial pool set up below the zipline attraction. A Good Samaritan tourist jumped into the water to help the boy. The boy has suffered minor injuries from the fall, but is psychologically damaged and afraid. Government agencies suspended a number of attractions at the park in response to the incident as authorities investigate.
Let's head over to Canada's largest city. In a historic mayoral election, Toronto now has its first woman of color mayor. Joshua Santinilla has the story.
Toronto has elected their new mayor this week. Olivia Chow is the first racialized woman elected to be mayor of the city of Toronto. Chow has won 37% of the votes, with her biggest support coming from the downtown core and majority of the Scarborough area. Anna Bailao has come in close second with 32% of the votes cast in her favor. Early on in the counting, Bailao took a lead of about 7,000 votes ahead of Chow. Last week, former Mayor John Tory endorsed Bailao, which helped push her standing in the polls. Chow has requested that she is sworn into office on July 12th. Details of the ceremony is still to be determined. She says she wants to get to work as Toronto's mayor as soon as possible. Chow's first order of business, as per her campaign promise, is housing. Approving social housing for a non-profit organization is her priority. On the question whether or not she will raise property taxes in the city, as her opponents have criticized her on, she tells Toronto not to feel worried and will make sure that the tax increase is reasonable. In Toronto, Ontario, Joshua Santayana for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The SOS Mediterranean NGO successfully rescued 86 migrants off the coast of Libya. Sources said 80% of the rescuees were unaccompanied minors. They tried to reach Europe on an overcrowded makeshift dinghy. But authorities said that the migrants faced difficulty due to strong winds and dangerous waters. Italian government also designated the port of Bari for the safe disembarkation of the survivors. The United Nations Agency for Refugees estimated that over 1,000 migrants have died or gone missing trying to reach Europe by crossing waters in mid-2023.
Swedish activist Greta Thunberg visits Kyiv, Ukraine to discuss the environmental consequences of war. Thunberg denounces the ecological havoc caused by the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. She describes the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam as an ecocide. She further accuses both countries of deliberate action against the environment.
Ecocide and environmental destruction is a form of warfare, as Ukrainians by this point know all too well, and so does Russia. And that's why they are deliberately targeting the environment and people's livelihoods and homes, and therefore also destroying lives.
The Kakhovka Dam issue caused a disaster, killing dozens of people and forcing thousands to flee. Head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, Andriy Yermak, deflects the accusation to Russia. Coming right up, Virgin Galactic completes first commercial spaceflight. Kai Sotto will officially play in the 2023 NBA Summer League. And head to the theaters this weekend for the 5th installment of Indiana Jones. Catch more news in business, sports, and entertainment when we return.
Pilipinas 2023 first runner-up, Katrina and Johnson. Binibining Pilipinas Globe, Ana Lasencia Lacrini. Binibining Pilipinas International 2023, Angelica Lopez.
I was discovered sa wake po. I was serving coffee.
Sa Lamay?
Yes.
Nagbibigay ka ng kape-kape sa Lamay.
Yes.
You started the dream with her, pero nagkasakit siya.
My mom was diagnosed with cancer in December of 2018.
Why did you have to polish cars? Opo, para siya naging mekaniko. Naghuhugas talaga ng kotse.
I had to really afford going to the Philippines.
You had to pay for your way.
Opo, I really had to spend all my money that I made my own.
Sabi nila, ang Miss International daw, kailangan mistisa. Hindi rin, Melanie Marquez was dark.
I know.
Yes. Ano kung ka maniwala sa kanila? Mananalo tayo dahil.
Yes.
Kani-kanilang mga kwentong buhay at hugot dito lang sa
Corina Interviews.
After 2 decades of setbacks and delays, finally Virgin Galactic completes its first commercial space flight. Aaron Gonzalez has more.
Our last set of checks before release are L-30. That's 30 seconds to release. And spaceship, 3, 2, 1, release, release, release.
The mission, known as Galactic 01, was successfully completed Thursday when the carrier rocket plane by Virgin Galactic, founded by British billionaire Richard Branson, took off from the Spaceport America facility in New Mexico about 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time and safely landed around 90 minutes later. It was flown to the edge of space by a pair of pilots and carried 4 passengers, a Virgin Galactic trainer to supervise the mission from inside the cabin, and its first 3 paying customers, who are members of the Italian Air Force. It also carried the company's VSS Unity spaceplane. The 3 Italian passengers conducted 13 scientific research experiments throughout the mission and even proudly hoisted their flag during the flight. The spaceship reached a maximum speed of Mach 2.88 and a peak altitude of about 279,000 feet. Aaron Gonzalez for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In sports, Filipino NBA prospect Kai Soto will officially play at the NBA Summer League, while the Tour de France 2023 prepares to roll in July. Bernadette Manuel has the report.
Filipino NBA prospect Kai Soto is officially listed in the Orlando Magic roster for the NBA 2K24 Summer League 2023 in Las Vegas. In an Instagram story, the Filipino center shared that he has arrived in Orlando to join the team. The 7'3" Soto will go up against the best young NBA talents in the Summer League. Soto will play under Osceola Magic coach Dylan Murphy, who will serve at the helm of their summer stint. The NBA Summer League will run from July 7 to 17, where all 30 NBA teams will play at least 5 games each, with the top 4 advancing to the semifinals. The 2 winning teams will meet for the championship game on the 17th. Across the border with France to Bayonne on a largely flat 185-kilometer run. 2 of the cycling superstars who have dominated the Tour de France in recent years are the favorites to win the 2023 race. Tadej Pogacar won the best-known event on the cycling calendar in 2020 and 2021, as well as finishing second in 2022, where he was beaten by the world team Jumbo-Visma's Jonas Vingegaard. Giro d'Italia champion Jai Hindley is considered the third nearest competitor by a distance.
Jonas Vingegaard!
Bernadette Manuel reporting for sports in Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Now that it's the weekend once again, we've got something for you to watch with the family. Stephanie Mayo has her pick of what to watch.
Now showing in theaters is Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. This dazzling animated film centers on an awkward teenager named Ruby Gillman, voiced by Lana Condor, best known for To All the Boys I've Loved Before franchise. Ruby feels like an outcast in her high school, but her life dramatically changes when she discovers that she is a direct descendant of warrior Kraken queens and will inherit the throne of her grandma, played by Oscar nominee Toni Collette. The movie also features the voice of Academy Award winner Jane Fonda. This movie may not be a masterpiece, but it's a cute, fun, and sweet tale that can be enjoyed by the entire family. Stephanie Mayo for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
How about another movie to watch? Perhaps a nostalgic one? Gia Gonzalez has the scoop.
Also showing in theaters now is Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny. After a lifetime's worth of escapades, Indy is ready to live a retired life away from adventure. But his plans changed after a surprise visit from goddaughter Helena Shaw. Set in 1969, Indiana Jones, the daredevil archaeologist played by Harrison Ford, races against time to recover a legendary dial that can alter the course of history. Together with Ford, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Antonio Banderas, John Rhys-Davies, and Mads Mikkelsen are just some of the stars included in the 5th installment of the franchise. Directed by James Mangold, it's got some mixed reviews, but hey, it's Harrison Ford and it's the final installment of the franchise, so it's a must-see. Gia Gonzalez for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Austrian artist Gustav Klimt's late-life masterpiece sets a European record of 85.3 million euros or $108.4 million, making it the most expensive artwork ever auctioned in Europe. From United Kingdom, Sarah Alcantara has the details.
The celebrated Austrian symbolist Dame mit Fascia, or Lady with a Fan, went under the hammer at Sotheby's. The previous auction record for an artwork sold in Europe was for Alberto Giacometti's Walking Man I, which went for £65 million in February 2010. Described as a beautiful, rich, and alluring portrait of an unnamed woman, the portrait was found on his easel in his studio when he died unexpectedly in February 1918 at the age of 55. Klimt's portrait rarely come onto the open market. Sotheby's said the only other of the same standard, portrait of Adele Blow-Bauer II, sold for $87.9 million at Christie's in New York in 2006. The portraits are reportedly to have been sold privately for more than $100 million each. Portrait of Adele Blobawa II, which depicts the wife of a Jewish sugar industrialist, was one of them and went for $150 million in 2017. The other portrait of Adele Blobawa I sold for $135 million in 2006 to the Nuya Gallery in New York. Although the hammer price for Tuesday's claim sale was £74 million, the unnamed buyer will pay £85.3 million when the buyer's premium, the standard fee charged by auction houses, is factored in. I am Sara Alcantara, London Bureau for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
And it is Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. To end the week, here's a quote from Grammy Award-winning artist John Legend. We all must follow a different path to let our light shine, and that's what makes us so unpredictable and unique.
Has to be my favorite quote of the week because I love John Legend.
I love John Legend.
I love John Legend, and I think we also always have to remind ourselves we're all on our different journeys, right?
So much for world records. I think each of us holds one.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
And I am Nina Richie Lago Flores, wishing all of you a great weekend. This is Mata ng Agila International, Trusted, Connected, on Point.